All right. Doesn't take an AI to figure out our last speaker. I mean, like it's 1, 2, and coming up is Gary Walter, the country manager of Realinflo, if I pronounced that correct. Did I get that correct?
That's right.
All right, I got it right. Yes. Here we go. All right, give it up for Gary, everyone.
Hi everyone, I'm the CEO of Realinflo. So as you can probably tell from our first slide, we are a real estate database platform. We focus on providing a very granular land and building and also transaction data across Asia Pacific. So we are based in Hong Kong originally, and we also got a Malaysian entity as well now. We're also VC backed in Hong Kong too. So just to introduce myself, I've got over 10 years experience in real estate, working with both developers and then also on the valuation and consultancy side as well. And so having worked so long in real estate, we get very excited, when we talk about tech. It's a very old industry, and there's been so much hype, about blockchain, AI, and people say, oh yeah, I'll be able to hold my phone up and see the instant value of a building. I'll be able to purchase instantly. But actually, as a real estate professional, being a chartered surveyor, there's one word that can strike fear immediately. And that word is automation. Everyone is scared of it. Nobody wants to change. And I think as Azariq mentioned earlier, there's a website called Will Robots Take My Job? And as a real estate appraiser, the chance is 90% of automation. And then if we compare it against also other jobs in other sectors, the chances doesn't look, long-term future doesn't look great. And there was also another study by RICS who set the global governing standards for real estate in the UK. And they were a bit more optimistic for us, and they said 88% of our tasks that we do in the daily job will be automated. And we can think back to when the Industrial Revolution happened. So everybody was scared. Will my jobs be taken? Will I have a job in a few years' time? But actually, when we look back, actually improved society and created a lot more jobs. And if we looked at other industries, where AI is being implemented, for example, in law, or as mentioned earlier in healthcare, it's actually made big improvements. And even if we look towards aviation. I think on a 16-hour flight, I think a pilot has control for around 8 minutes to fly. And if we look to the finance industry, tech is being implemented. You can see livestock prices, exchange rates, and PropTech is actually kind of born out of fintech, which give rise to online banking, peer-to-peer lending, and crowdfunding. And real estate is the most important and largest asset class in the world. The value of real estate globally is worth $228 trillion, which is 12 times the GDP of the US and 18 times of China. Normally it accounts for around 70 to 80% of our personal wealth. And it also supports the vast majority of bank lending. So it's a huge industry. But tech adoption has been extremely slow. There's quite a few reasons for this. First of all, the industry cycles are very long. I think there's one quote that real estate cycles typically last for around 18 years. And now we've been in an upcycle. So when things are good, there's not much incentive to change, especially in markets like Hong Kong. And we have a very big gap between domain, say real estate experts, and tech expertise. So typically, we're focused on doing deals. We're not really focused on, implementing tech. In the real estate industry as well, there's been a very big control of data. So nobody really wants to share data. Everyone thinks it's their advantage to keep the data close to themselves. So we don't really have access to a lot of data. And also, traditional players are very slow to adapt. Again, if in markets like Hong Kong, Singapore, where values have just been going up for the past 10, 20 years, there's not much incentive to change. And also, people in real estate only invest in real estate. Only lately that they're starting to invest more in prop tech as well. And also what we've experienced in real estate is a lack of standards. So we do have global standards, but they're not implemented. Malaysia has their own ways of measuring floor areas. Hong Kong has their own. Singapore has their own as well. And we all want to buy an apartment at some point, but we still ask the questions. When can we buy and sell real estate online? Why does it take 3 months to purchase? Why do we still do all our mortgage in paper forms? Quite simply, should I buy this property? Should I hold it or sell it? And why can't we see the value of every property in Malaysia? So let me focus on this problem. So say I'm an investor and I want to buy this office building, Wisma Gold Hill. Actually, when I first arrived in Malaysia, like quite a few years ago, I saw Wisma everywhere, and I thought, this owner owns every piece of real estate in Malaysia. But then my friend told me, yeah, actually, go to Google Translate. So that wasn't the owner. But we want to find things like the ownership, who are the tenants, how much rent they're paying, lease expiry dates, rent-free periods, floor areas, what's the lot details, zoning, etc., market trends. So there's so much information you need. And let me walk you through the process now. So actually this fund starts off like this. This is actually Malaysia data from JPPH. So you go through spreadsheets, and then this is the land registry site. This is in Hong Kong. Then you go through town planning sites. And then often what we do in real estate, we'd call up our buddy, in a different company and say, what did you do that deal for on the 10th floor? He'll tell you that data. And then you'll go through lease contracts. This is actually how Hong Kong works. So you can see trying to extract information is very time consuming. It's very hard to automate this at the moment. This is the most liquid real estate market in the world, by the way. And then what we do is put it all back into spreadsheets and try to make sense of this data. And actually, when I came up with the idea, for our company, actually it was just down to frustration. So I was actually doing a valuation for a client in one Citygate in Lantau Island, Hong Kong. And then actually my colleague in another department was actually gathering information on the same building. I then did a project in Cambodia, and then a friend in another company was looking at the same information. And then later we did a market study in Yangon, and a friend in Singapore working in real estate also asked me for the same information. So I was thinking, actually we are repeating this task all the time, getting the same data, repeating the same processes, and in the end we came up with a model for actually crowdsourcing data. And this process is very slow. Just to look at one building or submarket, you can take 4 weeks, at least 4 weeks. Multiply that across, different buildings, different markets. You're looking at months, and it's very expensive. And if I go back to the picture I'd shown you before, this is actually how real estate works now. So just to give you an example, we've done all this work, and we might produce a huge report. But actually, it's mainly historical. We look back, we just take a snapshot. And actually, only 5% might be forward-looking. But in the future, we're spending less time on the data crunching. We can actually, have more forward-looking recommendations, and actually spend time on what matters. So what do we need? Actually, we need better data, not just on transactions, buildings, but can we incorporate population changes, personality, crime rates, debt levels for a building. And this will bring a lot of opportunity to the industry, because at the moment we currently operate at this level. Actually for a certain project or looking to invest in a building, all of your time is mainly done on data collection. But in the future, we can actually spend time on what creates value. So just to give you a bit of background, because we've seen that adoption in tech has been quite slow in real estate. So you're probably familiar with some of the companies in prop tech, what we call 1.0, probably Guru, CoStar in the US, Rightmove in the UK. So actually the first wave of prop tech was mainly looking at companies that are listing sites, just taking offline business processes online in recent years, we've moved towards more prop tech, what we call 2.0, and this is really built on the sharing economy, also what we call smart real estate. So this is give birth to companies such as like Airbnb and WeWork. And we can't forget our favorite tool in the industry, which is Excel, which we still use today. And going forward, PropTech 3.0, this is what we call will be the next wave of using technologies such as AI, so to say. And that's actually figuring out where to put our company. So I wouldn't say, like a lot of things that we've been saying is, we're not quite there yet in terms of the data. And I think the message I'm trying to get across now is like we need to fix this problem first. So we need solutions. Everyone's favorite one is blockchain. This is going to solve everything. There's a lot of other terms, that we use. AVMs, which is probably going to be implemented quite soon now. AI, but actually AI is the one that we see the most potential. And why is this? First, because it can help us solve this data problem. Second, it can actually help us, draw actionable insights for our clients. Quite simply, just to answer that question: should I buy, hold, or sell a piece of real estate? And then it's already, to some extent, got some proven adoption. And this actually solves real industry problems, which I think, when we look at some terms like blockchain, actually, what's it really solving? Because at the end of the day, if you're selling or buying real estate, in a lot of markets, it doesn't really matter what kind of form that contract comes on. And it can actually augment your existing role. So it can actually allow you to provide a lot more value. So this is just looking at potential problem that can be solved. In Malaysia, a huge problem is the overhang we have in real estate. So I think some figures published last year was residential was at over 32,000 units, shops over 5,000. So we actually can collect all of this data. Developers can actually choose. They can actually build things that people want, or they can actually choose not to build. Automated valuation model is something that is talked about quite frequently. Actually, in Hong Kong, we're using our data to build the first AVM for commercial real estate in Hong Kong. This will take a bit of work to get right, mainly because of the data. There's major gaps, and also due to regulation. So currently, if you're a chartered surveyor, you have to follow certain guidelines, and incorporating this into the model is going to be a bit of a challenge. Also, it's still early days. The market's still rising. We've yet to experience a major crash. So in recent years, so it'll be interesting to see, how the model can predict that. Also going to look at the impact, on hard assets. If we start changing the way that we work, actually a lot of the property stock might become obsolete. For example, now everyone's talking about space as a service instead of just your office stock. So this involves capturing real-time data around a building, and before buildings were just places that we go to work, you go down, sit down, do your job. But if a lot of this work is actually being automated, the space that you use will have to change. And this can also impact on the valuation method, because before, actually, we're just collecting rental data, collecting sales transactions. We actually start to value buildings more as a business rather than just using the normal method. And everyone's saying, talking about, offices are going to disappear, people are just going to work from home. But being in Hong Kong for the last few weeks, we've had a lot of working from home due to the current situation, and I don't think this is going to happen. I can't do it for more than a few weeks, to be honest. And also on retail, there's going to be quite a lot of impact. For example, a lot of stock in Asia. There's oversupply is quite a common problem in Asian markets. They simply build too much, especially in Chinese cities. And actually, a lot of this is a new shopping mall in Singapore, actually, and it's moving more towards collecting data, driving customer experiences, and actually creating a destination. So transforming real estate, how do we do it? We need more and better quality data. There's been a huge increase in computing power. And also now we can do, say, more on the deep learning side, but the data is really a problem that we need to fix. It's often talked about in big data, the 4 Vs. And actually, all of these are still a problem in real estate. In terms of volume, something that we've tried to crack with our platform is actually developing a crowdsourcing element. So we've actually been able to fill in a lot of gaps in the market. Just looking at giving a 10-year vision. So in the next 3 to 5 years, my opinion is, we'll still spend the majority of the time trying to piece together all of these multiple silo data sets. And actually the challenge will still be moving everyone out of Excel. It's very hard. I think that's going to be probably a 3 to 5 year task. And then also applying data standards. So for us, we're trying to apply global data standards to Asia so that people can be sure of the data quality. But what we will see is big improvements in workflows and people doing less of the grunt work. Currently in real estate, I'd say we're more in the phase of the attitude towards use. We still don't really have the intention at this stage, but this is something after a few more years, and then after 5 years, we might start to see some of these applications. And in 10 years, I also don't like to make too many predictions, but hopefully we'll have transparent real estate data, and we might be able to reduce overhang to 0. So just some final thoughts. So we're quite positive, on Malaysia as a place to develop the tech. We think we need to collaborate more between the technical side and both the industry as well. I think real estate firms need to be more open. They still operate like they have an IT department, and the IT department is just, my computer won't switch on. So, I think there should actually be every property company, especially the service firms, should actually hire a CTO. And, just as an organization, you can actually focus on those 88% of the tasks that you can start to automate. And also in real estate, it's a very complex, fragmented industry. There's a huge human element, which I think is kind of hard to capture still. So I think there will be no single platform, that will solve all of the problems. Yeah, so that's my views on AI in real estate, and it's my contact details as well. Thanks.
Alright, so you guys know how this works by now. Q&A. Okay.
So in valuation in AI, do you think the AI is making the market more efficient, or is making the buyers even worse?
How do you mean
Like
making buyers?
it extrapolated the biases, like this area is expensive, the AI will predict that it's going to be even more expensive, and come a bubble, let's say, in real estate.
Oh, do you mean it just keep forcing up the prices?
Yeah, like a flash crash in Wall Street.
I don't think so. I mean, it's. I think it would just reduce the time taken to do a transaction, because now, just say you want to buy a residential unit, actually, if you put in before you actually do the purchase, you might get a valuation, and that can actually take 3 to 4 weeks to get a valuer to do that. So I think it's just cutting down that time. To possibly a few hours or a few days that could be turned around. But in terms of pushing up the values, I don't think it would be done, because it will still depend on transacted prices in the market. So unless people actually paying a higher price, this wouldn't actually be incorporated into the model.
All right, any other questions? Go ahead.
So for your presentation is data. Can we say that the data is the bottleneck to make AI pushing the real estate business?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So is there any thoughts on how can we get this data bottleneck issue fixed?
Yeah, well for us, what we've done at Realinflo is try to, first we actually start off in cleaning up all of the public data sets, which is actually quite a big task in itself. For example, in Hong Kong, we actually take data from 16 different sources, and even standardizing things like buildings and addresses. We actually took like 9 different government databases from that source. So the buildings department, calls one building something, the planning department something else, lands department something else. So we've actually tried to standardize that. And then on top of that, we actually have a crowdsourcing element between real estate agents, valuers, and brokers, and researchers, sorry. So through that, because normally that kind of information isn't registered, you can't get it in any databases, and that would be the data that I showed the telephone, and you'd pick up and call your friend, and if you're working in JLL, you'd call your buddy in CBRE and said, what did you do that deal for? So actually, that is all kind of traded offline, but we're just kind of taking that to an online basis. So we've actually developed a platform where if you give us data, we'll give you points for that data, and then you can use that to purchase other data in the platform. So it actually gives quite good incentive, for people to share data.
About that, like this community of people that you're getting them to give you data, how are you encouraging them to contribute? Yes, you said that there's points for me to buy, get other data sets, but in the initial phase, before I even know that data is something helpful for me, what kind of community are you reaching out to? Are you reaching out to people in the real estate business? Are you reaching out to people in tech, researchers? How are you doing that?
So it's actually been going through the network to begin with. Luckily for my previous job, I was based in Hong Kong, but working a lot around the region. So I used to do a lot of work in Malaysia, Singapore, Japan, also in China, Indonesia. So actually it was quite good to have that initial network. And then I think that's the first thing, because actually real estate is very relationship driven. So, sometimes actually I go to someone, I cold call them and say, can you give me data? And then they just put down the phone or something. So if I call up a buddy or someone that I've done a project with, and normally I'm quite persistent, if they sign up, and then I'll call you probably 5 times that week or in a day, and then say, can you send us data? So it's actually, but I think giving at the start it required quite a lot of hour grease to get it going. Luckily some users, they could see the long-term value. So we actually got quite good data for Hong Kong and Malaysia up front. So we had a few 100,000 transactions before we could kind of launch in that market.
So you mentioned your users earlier, and I'm curious to see, in the real estate industry, what the adoption rate has been like, because people generally are not at that level yet where we trust machines to make important decisions for us. And in the real estate industry, where things have been done this way for hundreds of years, are people ready to have an algorithm evaluate their real estate property for them?
That's a great question. I think not yet, not entirely, but I think that's quite good because it gives us time to get the data first. So I think it's slowly coming to that. There are actually models that we do use. So there's Argus, that and then we often build in-house models. There's another one called Estate Master. So we do use some models to some extent, but I think there's still quite a lot of our own input into it. And often still, decisions are made on experience. And it's okay, I've been in this market for 20 years. So I know this is a good buy, which isn't always the case, but it's still often the right case in a lot of markets. But I think going forward, people will become more open to it, and I think a key thing is the data, because at the moment, if you don't have the data, then kind of any model you have, it's basically not very useful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is your AI better than the human expert?
No, I wouldn't say so yet. This is like in, so for that we're actually working with a local valuation company in Hong Kong. So it's still at the POC stage. Yeah, I wouldn't want to say how accurate it is at the moment. Yeah.
Crowd full of questions. All right. I just saw something that captured me. It's like using AI for, the repetitive tasks. It's like getting automation done right, so we can actually use our minds. Like we can use our abilities for something that is more useful, which is prediction, and we can do our own. So maybe a bit optimistic way to look about it was like, automating what is repetitive, automating what is, that doesn't need that much thinking in it. Maybe that stuff that takes 1 second, 2 seconds of us to think, that task, automating that so we can focus on more. So so in the real estate, how does that apply again? I know I'm making you repeat the slides, but I didn't quite get it.
Sure, yeah. So you mean like how we collect the data and stuff? So actually, it's those steps that I went through. That's actually how it's done. I mean, a good example this week is I've got a friend. He's an American guy. He was working in Hong Kong real estate industry for around 5 years, and then every time he had to model up a building, he'd do the same. He'd call me up for comps. And then he would go through one by one, because actually to get one transaction in Hong Kong, first you have to go to this land registry website and you have to search a building, and then for that building you have to search a reference number for a floor, and then through that you have to purchase a land search to be able to get a specific unit, and then for that unit you then purchase, you get a reference number, and then you can then go and purchase a document if it's there. So you've gone through like that's probably like 20 minutes already, and then that's just to get maybe a transaction. So like when the data is structured like that, it's just so tedious. I mean, actually I used to sit at work and just get like frustrated, like there's got to be a better way to work, even though I'm not really on the technical side, but I was just thinking there must be a way to solve it. And then this week, he's actually back in the US working, and he's actually started learning Python. And then he's actually, and then he called me at like 3 a.m. I don't know, it was in the morning. He's like so excited because he managed to pull out like 5,000 comps on a small town called Worcester, and then he's like showing me all the data. But that's just the difference of, I think when we compare, sometimes Asian markets to the US or Europe, sometimes they are starting off with better data. So that kind of determines the progress in some sense. Yeah.
Any more questions? So as usual, can you go back to the contact me? Yeah. There you go, you guys. Gary later. Pictures. Thank you. And then, what do you guys think the next step will be? Token of appreciation. Oh, we did it twice. All right. So a token of appreciation from Will right now. I'll book that. Okay.